They said she disappeared without a trace, swallowed by the mountains, just another lost girl on the Appalachian Trail. For 11 years her name faded like footprints in rain. Mariah Talbot was 17 when she vanished. No body, no signal, no closure. Then, on a fog-soaked morning, a lone hiker strayed off the marked path and found her backpack, hanging from a dead tree like a warning. Inside, a journal, a disposable camera, and her ID, still crisp, untouched by time. The question is no longer, where did she go? It's, why is she back now? Fog clung low to the forest floor like a restless spirit. Jacob Fields, 43, trail runner turned amateur adventurer, had veered off the Appalachian Trail looking for quiet. He found something else. It was suspended from the crooked branch of a blighted hemlock, sun-bleached canvas, fraying at the seams, the faded logo of a youth hiking camp stitched near the zipper. It didn't belong here. The area hadn't seen a footstep in years. Even animals avoided the ridge. Jacob's breath hitched as he reached up, fingers brushing rusted metal. The pack gave easily, too easily. He knelt beside a moss-covered rock and unzipped the main compartment. A puff of mildew escaped like a sigh from the past. Inside, a notebook with cracked binding, each page warped from moisture but intact. A disposable camera, yellowed plastic glinting in the morning light, and an ID card. The photo showed a girl with wide brown eyes, a crooked smile. Mariah Talbot, age 17. Issued 11 years ago, expired. Or maybe not. Jacob's knees weakened. He knew that name. Everyone in this region did. She was the girl who vanished without a trace in 2014, somewhere near mile marker 2136. Her family had searched, pleaded on national television. The authorities found nothing but footprints that led nowhere. Eventually, even those disappeared beneath snow. He glanced around, nothing but woods, so thick the light barely touched the forest floor. No markers, no trail. Just the deep breath of the earth and the silence that followed. He took a step back. Something about the tree, the angle of the branch, the way the bag dangled, felt deliberate, like someone had hung it there, not lost, left. Jacob stuffed the contents back in the bag, hands trembling. He didn't know if he was holding evidence or an omen, but something inside him whispered, "This doesn't belong to the past anymore." He looked up. Somewhere in the trees, a shadow shifted. The glow of the laptop screen cast blue shadows across the walls of Eliza Hart's modest living room. She sat motionless in her armchair, mug of untouched tea cooling in her hand. The article was brief, 3 paragraphs, barely updated. Backpack believed to belong to missing Appalachian teen, discovered no official statement yet, no forensic confirmation. But Eliza knew. Mariah Talbot. That name still echoed in her bones, in the silence of sleepless nights. It wasn't just another case. It was the case. The one that devoured her from the inside, hollowed her out like rot beneath polished wood. The one that ruined her. She clicked the photo attached to the article. It was grainy, clearly shot from a phone, but the object in the frame was unmistakable. A canvas backpack dangling from a dead branch. Beneath the headline, one detail stabbed into her chest. ID recovered confirms identity of missing teenager. Eliza set the mug down, her hands trembling. She told herself not to read the comments, but her eyes betrayed her. Conspiracy theories. Hikers swapping ghost stories. Locals saying she was taken by the forest itself. One user posted a single sentence that clung to her like a scream. She was never meant to be found. Eliza closed the laptop and sat in the dark. The world outside her window had moved on. Small town life, grandbabies in strollers, retirees playing cards at the diner. But her world had stopped 11 years ago, the day Mariah's trail went cold. She remembered the map, All those red pins, the search parties that thinned out, the press conferences where she held back tears, and the girl's mother, shaking, hollow-eyed, whispering, "Please don't let her become a ghost." But she had. Mariah had become smoke, memory, a missing poster peeling off a trailhead board. And now, the backpack. Eliza stood, her knees cracking with age and regret. She didn't know what drove her toward the hallway closet where her old field bag still hung beneath her coats. She didn't ask herself why she dusted it off, why her hands knew exactly what to pack. She only knew one thing: you don't get second chances. Not in this job, not in this life, unless the mountain gives one to you. Noah Talbot hadn't dreamed of his sister in nearly 6 years. Not since the night he'd finally given himself permission to forget what her voice sounded like. But the morning after the news broke, he woke with her name in his throat like smoke. Mariah. He sat on the edge of the bed, sweat clinging to his spine, the room silent except for the hum of the fridge in the kitchenette. Outside, Manhattan howled, a city that never shut up, never stopped. And yet, in that moment, it felt distant, like he'd woken in a world still holding its breath. He didn't need to read the article. The call came at 4:06 a.m., his mother's number flashing on his screen like a warning. He didn't answer, couldn't. Instead, he found himself typing her name into the search bar. Mariah Talbot backpack found. Her photo appeared before the first headline finished loading. That old one from the missing posters. The one he always hated. Her smile frozen mid-laugh, like she hadn't seen the camera, like she hadn't known that moment would outlive her. He hadn't gone back to the trail since the summer she disappeared. Couldn't bear the scent of pine needles or hear bird song without bile rising in his throat. But now the forest was calling again. Not like it had before. Not like a mystery, but like a voice. He pulled the leather box from beneath his bed. Inside, her necklace, a pressed flower from her last letter, and the journal he kept the year after she vanished. Pages full of guilt and theories. One note repeated like a mantra: I should have gone with her. They were twins, born minutes apart, raised like mirror images. But when she left for the Appalachian Trail, he stayed behind, drifting into bar fights and city jobs that never stuck. He told himself he was the anchor, but anchors sink. Now, 11 years later, someone had tugged at that chain. He stared at the trail map on his wall, the route she planned to hike. He'd memorized every mile marker once. Now, one glared back at him, circled in faded red. Mile 2136, where they said she was last seen. Noah exhaled, grabbed his jacket, and packed a bag without fully knowing why. Something in the woods had woken up, and it had remembered his name. The locals didn't call it by its name anymore, not allowed. On the maps, it was labeled innocently enough, just another stretch of trail near mile 2136. But in town, whispered behind mugs of black coffee and under the buzz of old bar lights, it was known as the Devil's Spine. A crooked ridge line half sunken into shadow even at noon, where compasses spun and birds refused to sing. Old-timers said the land itself shifted when no one was looking. Trees rearranged themselves, paths doubled back like snakes eating their tails. You didn't get lost there. You disappeared. At Wayfair General Store, a faded corkboard still held missing posters dating back decades. Most were curled and yellow, names half remembered or never known, but every one of them vanished within the same 12-mile radius. That's where the whispers began. They say there's a hum at night, said Earl Morgan, the oldest man in town and part-time park historian. Not like wind, not like animals, like wires inside your skull. Eliza Hart listened quietly. She hadn't planned to come here, especially not so soon. But the moment her rental car passed the wooden "Welcome to Bryan County" sign, her old instincts took over. Small talk, slow questions, listening for what people didn't say. "You're talking about the spine," she said finally. Earl's eyes narrowed. "Ain't no map ever drawn it right," he muttered. "It's cursed land, always has been." "Because of Mariah?" He shook his head. "Long before her. There was a boy in '82, and another girl in '97. Even a pair of rangers once, back in the '60s. Animals torn up like they'd been carved with a blade. No prints, no blood trail. Like the woods ate 'em clean." Eliza swallowed hard. "And the Watcher?" she asked, almost as a joke. But no one laughed. Earl leaned in close, voice gravel low. "You see him once. You don't come back. Just the eyes, high up in the trees, waiting, watching." He tapped the counter twice. "You want to find that girl, Detective Hart?" he said. "Then you better pray she ain't still in his woods." April 12th, 2014. Appalachian Trail, Georgia Start Point, Day 1, 10:17 p.m. The words spilled across the journal in looping, eager handwriting. "First night on the trail. I'm alone in the best way. The stars are insane out here. Clearer than I've ever seen. No headlights, no city noise. Just me, the trees, and whatever's whispering out there. Squirrel? Probably. Hope it's a squirrel." Mariah Talbot's fingers were smudged with ink and peanut butter as she sat cross-legged in her tiny orange tent, her flashlight dimming with every minute. Her boots lay muddy outside, laces loose. A pair of headphones rested around her neck, buzzing low with some indie track she didn't know the lyrics to yet, but planned to. She was 17 and full of reasons. Reasons to hike. Reasons to leave. Reasons not to come back. Mom cried when I left. Noah pretended he didn't care, but he slipped a note in my pack, said, "Come back smarter," whatever that means. I think he's scared I'll change, or that he won't. Or maybe he's right. Maybe I want to change. Maybe this is how I become someone I'd actually want to be around. She paused, listened. Owls, wind, the creak of limbs swaying in the dark, but also something else. A rustle too soft, too purposeful. Mariah held her breath. It's probably nothing. Everyone warned me about black bears, but I swear the real danger is the stories hikers tell each other. Ghosts in the hills, the watcher of the trees, some creepy old wives' tale. I don't scare easy, but tonight, I feel... She scratched out the next word. I feel alive. That's the right word. She smiled, half laughing at herself, then scrawled the last line. This is the first day of who I'm supposed to be. The camera shutter clicked twice in the dark. One selfie by the fire, one of the night sky. The next morning, her tent was found zipped and empty. No signs of a struggle, no blood. Just her journal beside her rolled-up sleeping bag, pages fluttering like something had turned them. Her last written words, "I hear something." Burb. The town of Briar Ridge hadn't changed much in 11 years. Same cracked pavement curling at the edges of Main Street. Same warped boards on the diner porch. The same weather-worn church bell that rang every Sunday at 9. And at the trailhead, nailed to the faded wooden information board, was her face. Mariah Talbot. Missing. Age, 17. Last seen, near mile 2136. If found, please contact. Eliza Hart's boot crunched on gravel as she approached it. The edges of the poster were curled inward, like it was recoiling from the sun. A corner was torn, and someone had scrawled "Ghost Bait" across the bottom in black Sharpie. She stared at it for a long time, then slowly reached up and peeled it off. "Don't waste your time," said a voice behind her. A man leaned against the open tailgate of a red pickup, arms crossed, face weathered with sun and memory. Sheriff Dean Keller. He hadn't aged well. "You're not welcome here, Hart," he said, without turning his eyes away. "Not here to be welcomed," Eliza replied. "Just here to do the job you never finished," Dean snorted. "You think that backpack changes things? After all this time? You dragged this town through hell the first time. The girl's gone. Let her stay gone." Eliza folded the poster and slid it into her coat pocket. "The forest disagrees." The silence between them bristled. People watched from inside their shops, curtains parting like shy ghosts. She saw the way they stared at her, not angry, not curious, just exhausted, like they'd already buried Mariah once and weren't willing to dig her up again. "Truth is, Sheriff," she said softly, "I don't think she ever left." Dean's jaw tensed, but he said nothing. Eliza turned and walked past him, up the small gravel incline that led to the trail entrance. As she passed the wooden post that marked the start of the Appalachian Trail, she placed one hand on it. She didn't look back. The trees didn't greet her. They closed around her like a door. The ranger station was a squat stone building nestled just below the timberline. Its walls were plastered with outdated weather warnings, black and white maps, and laminated trail safety rules that read more like prayers than instructions. Eliza stepped inside, her boots damp from morning dew, the scent of old coffee and wood smoke clinging to the air. Behind the desk sat Ranger Walt Dorsey, once a towering presence on the mountain. Now he looked older, shrunk into his flannel, gray etched deep into his beard. But his eyes hadn't dulled. They sharpened the second they landed on her. "Eliza Hart," he said without warmth. "Didn't think I'd see you up here again." "You were the last official to speak to Mariah Talbot," she said, skipping the pleasantries. His fingers paused on the handle of his coffee mug. "So they say. You logged her name, signed her entry, and gave her the orientation speech. You looked her in the eyes. That was 11 years ago. You remember her," she pressed. "You remember something." He stared down into the mug like he was trying to read something inside it. "She was just another kid," he said finally. "Hikers come through every spring. Some smart, some reckless. She was somewhere in the middle, polite, confident, maybe too confident. You talked to her for 10 minutes. "I did," he said. "She had a map she didn't need and a plan she wouldn't stick to." There was a pause. "And?" Walt's knuckles whitened against the ceramic. "She asked me about the spine," he said quietly. Eliza blinked. "She knew about it?" "She'd heard stories, said she wanted to see if it was real, said, if something was that haunted, it deserved to be understood." Eliza's throat tightened. "What did you tell her?" "I told her stay clear of it." And she nodded like she would. But in her eyes, he looked up at her now, and the quiet was thunderous. "I saw a girl already headed into the dark." She waited. But Walt Dorsey said nothing else. The silence behind his eyes wasn't forgetfulness. It was protection. The trail thinned until it didn't feel like a trail at all. Just broken twigs and dry leaves crunching beneath Noah's boots. The deeper he hiked, the more unnatural the quiet became. Even the birds stopped. Every breath of wind carried something heavier than cold. He hadn't planned to veer off route. But something about the turn, barely marked, half covered by a rotting branch, felt familiar, as if his feet remembered something his mind did not. After an hour of climbing, he saw it. The cabin sat crooked against the slope, half swallowed by bramble and thyme. Its tin roof had caved in on one side. Saplings grew through the front porch, and one shutter hung limp like a broken limb. But the door was sealed, not just closed, but latched from the outside with old rusted wire and a lock that didn't match. Noah's chest tightened. Whoever had locked it hadn't been trying to keep something out. He hesitated only a moment before breaking the seal. The interior reeked of damp wood, rot, and something faintly metallic. Dust hung in beams of filtered light. Every surface, walls, floors, ceiling, was covered in scratch-like etchings, swirls, arrows, names, numbers, repeated phrases. Don't turn around. It's behind the trees. He watches in silence. Noah's hand grazed a rotted shelf. A piece of paper fluttered loose, drifting to the floor like a falling leaf. He bent down, heart pounding. It was torn, the ink smudged from time and moisture, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Mariah's. Day 9. I'm off the trail. Something feels wrong. The forest is different here, like it breathes. Last night I saw a cabin through the trees, but I didn't go in. I was afraid of what I'd find, afraid it might know my name. Noah gripped the paper until it crinkled in his fist. She'd been here. But how had the page ended up inside? Had she come back? Had someone else brought it? Then he saw it, carved into the far wall, just above an overturned cot. Mariah T. 2014. Still here. A cold wind slipped through the cracks in the cabin wall, and for a second, Noah was certain the shadows had moved. The photos came back in a manila envelope, still warm from the lab. Eliza sat alone in a booth at the back of Briar Ridge Diner, her coffee long cold, untouched. Outside, the wind dragged pine needles across the empty lot. She opened the envelope with the precision of an autopsy, slow, knowing what she might find could gut her. 32 images. Most were what you'd expect. Tree-lined trail shots, awkward selfies, a blurry fire pit, a squirrel mid-leap, moments of solitude, joy, freedom, pieces of Mariah before the world swallowed her. Eliza sifted through them carefully, laying each one out across the booth like puzzle pieces. Then she saw it, not taken by Mariah. Wrong angle, wrong framing, and most damning, the timestamp. April 21st, 2014, 2 days after she vanished. The photo was crooked, like someone had held the camera at their hip, not looking through the viewfinder. It showed the inside of a forest clearing, unfamiliar to Eliza, jagged rocks in the background, a sun-bleached bone near a fallen log. And in the center of the frame, a silhouette, not Mariah, but someone standing, watching, wearing what looked like a ranger's coat, face completely obscured by shadow and foliage. The shutter must have clicked by accident, or maybe it didn't. Eliza's hands trembled as she held the photo closer. Behind the figure, carved into a tree, a circle of lines radiating outward. It looked tribal, intentional, ritualistic. She flipped the photo over. On the back, faint smudges of ink, blurred by water or sweat, or both. Barely legible. He doesn't like the light. The air left her lungs. Someone had taken that photo after Mariah was already missing. Someone had been with her pack. Someone who didn't want to be seen. She grabbed her phone and took a digital scan, then carefully slid the original back into the envelope. As she stood, her waitress, local girl, maybe 20, appeared at the table glancing at the photos. "Is that from the backpack?" she asked, eyes wide. Eliza didn't answer, but she did ask, "Have you ever seen this symbol before?" The girl paled. "Only once." "Where?" She swallowed. "Etched into a tree near Devil's Spine. We called it the Watcher's Mark." April 18th, 2014, Day 7. Mariah's journal page was smeared with sweat, dirt, and something darker. A coppery stain clung to the edge of the paper, almost invisible under flashlight glare. Her handwriting had grown more frantic, letters slanted, words running together like she hadn't lifted the pen between breaths. "Something's wrong. I heard it tonight. A scream. Not an animal. Human. High-pitched, sudden, then gone. Like someone fell or got dragged." She hadn't meant to wander so far off trail. It started with curiosity. She'd seen movement through the trees at sunset, a flicker of red like a coat or flag. By the time she realized she was lost, the sun was gone and the trees had started to whisper. Her journal rested on her knees inside the tent. The walls felt paper thin. She could still smell it in the air. There's this metal smell, like pennies, like old knives. I checked myself for cuts. Nothing. But the air reeks like blood. She had recorded a short voice memo too. Eliza would later find it on the camera's audio function. Never played, never sent. This is Mariah Talbot. I think someone's hurt out here. Maybe. I don't know. I feel like I'm being watched. I don't want to be dramatic, but if I don't check in tomorrow, maybe send someone? I'm near that fork past mile 2134, I think. Jesus, I thought this trip would fix me. I thought being alone meant free. But now I think I've made a mistake. Outside the tent, a twig snapped. Mariah stopped writing. Every muscle in her body tensed. The sound wasn't close, but not far enough either. She turned off the flashlight. Silence. Then the leaves shifted again, slower this time. Footsteps, measured, deliberate. She crawled to the zipper of her tent and pressed her eye to the mesh. Nothing. Then, a shape moved between trees. Tall, wrong in proportion. No flashlight, no gear. Just standing. Watching. She clenched her jaw and wrote 2 more words before the ink ran dry. He knows. The file was thin. 1 page, 2 photographs, and a name most people never heard. Delaney Morse. Eliza stared at the photocopy in the sheriff's archives, her fingers curled tight around the edges. The ink was faded. The photo was worse, blurry, underexposed, probably taken at a shelter registration stop. Delaney stood alone, no smile, the straps of her hiking pack cinched tightly to a wiry frame. Her eyes were hollow in a way that didn't come from the hike. There had been no press coverage, no alerts, no community fundraisers or tearful vigils. Just a single report, filed late, almost as an afterthought, by a trail maintenance volunteer who noticed her name hadn't reappeared in any of the northern shelter logs. Young woman, approximately 19 to 21 years old, possibly transient, entered trail system April 10, 2014, last seen near mile 2135, approximately April 17th. The same day Mariah disappeared, same forest, same silence. Delaney had no family, no permanent address, no one to call or search or scream her name on the news. Eliza's voice broke the stillness. She vanished within hours of Mariah. Dean Keller stood behind her, arms crossed, face closed. We assumed she wandered off, maybe meant to. No ID, no known next of kin, not our responsibility. She was still a person. He didn't flinch. She wasn't Mariah Talbot. There it was, the bitter truth wrapped in bureaucratic justification. Eliza returned to the photo. Delaney looked like someone used to being forgotten, a girl with a story no one bothered to read. She deserves more than a paragraph, Eliza said. Dean exhaled, irritated. There was nothing to investigate, no sign of her after that last sighting, just like Mariah. No, Eliza corrected, not just like Mariah, because now we know Mariah's backpack reappeared. 11 years later, Delaney's didn't. She paused. Unless it did, and someone buried that too. A beat of silence stretched too long. You want my advice? Dean said finally. Let ghosts stay buried. That trail has teeth. Eliza slid Delaney's photo into her coat pocket. And maybe it spits bones when it's ready. She walked out before he could answer. Outside, the wind lifted the leaves like whispers, and Eliza suddenly wondered, What if Delaney was the first one taken, and Mariah just walked into her shadow? The ridge loomed like a broken spine against the tree line, its jagged rocks slick with morning frost, rising above the forest like the vertebrae of some ancient beast. The volunteer search team moved cautiously, led by Ranger Walt and flanked by a younger deputy with eyes too wide and boots too clean. They hadn't expected to find anything. The dogs weren't even tracking scent, just practicing search drills, until one of them stopped, froze, and whimpered. Walt knelt beside the hound and swept back the underbrush. The smell hit him first, not fresh death, older, dry, sour with decay and time. He pulled back the moss-covered rocks, and there they were. Bones, half buried, exposed by recent rain. A cracked jawbone, a piece of pelvis, vertebrae like puzzle pieces scattered wrong. He radioed it in with a voice too calm for the tremble in his hands. 2 days later, in the Briar Ridge Municipal Lab, Eliza stood over the stainless steel exam table. A forensic tech, young, precise, walked her through the report. Female, estimated age range 20 to 30, likely white, time of death, hard to say exactly, but well over a decade ago. Cause? Eliza asked. The tech turned the skull toward her, revealing the fracture above the left temple, caved inward like a fist had driven through it. Blunt force trauma, heavy, instant. Eliza's stomach turned. Mariah? The tech shook her head. No dental match, no prior injuries that align. DNA came back negative. This isn't your girl. Eliza stared at the remains. The room felt too still. Then who the hell is it? No one answered. Later, back at her motel, Eliza opened the case file for Delaney Morse again. The description, the age, the timeline. She pulled the photo out and held it beside the report. It was a match. Eliza exhaled slowly. Not Mariah, but someone else had died on that trail the week she vanished. Someone who'd screamed in the forest. Someone no one had come looking for. Until now. She picked up her recorder and pressed record. If Delaney's bones were found here, then Mariah saw something she was never supposed to, and someone made sure she never told a soul. They sat on the hood of Noah's Jeep, parked just outside the ranger station, the forest looming behind them like a held breath. A pale moon cut through the trees, turning the gravel silver. The cold crept in around their collars, but neither moved. Eliza stared at the dark trail beyond. You ever feel like the ground's lying to you? She asked softly. Like it swallowed the truth just to keep you guessing? Noah watched her. You said Mariah wasn't alone, that she may have seen something, someone. Eliza nodded, slowly. Back in 2014, I interviewed every ranger, every officer, every trail hand in Briar Ridge. Twice, some 3 times. She hesitated. There was a pattern, a set of logs that didn't line up, a misfiled access report, and then one hiker's journal entry we never released. It mentioned seeing a man in uniform off-trail, not helping, not searching, just watching from the trees. Noah straightened. You think someone in law enforcement was involved? I know someone was covering something. Every time I got close, someone pulled me off the case, told me I was pushing too hard, that I was upsetting the town. Her voice cracked. I had a name, a theory. I tried to go public. The next morning, my badge was on a desk and my car wouldn't start. Noah blinked. You think it was Keller? I think Keller knows more than he ever said. But no, not him. He's not clean, but he's not the one who knew where to hide a body so deep it'd take a decade and a flood to find. She looked at him now, eyes gleaming with something fierce and unfinished. I think whoever took Mariah wore the uniform to gain her trust, to make her step off the trail. A beat. Noah's voice was low. You think they're still out there? Eliza nodded. I think they never left. I think they walk those woods every year, watching, waiting. She took a breath. And I think they were the last person Mariah ever saw. Behind them, a twig cracked in the dark, but when they turned, there was nothing. Noah stepped off the marked path at dawn, following a trail that didn't exist on any map, just a gut feeling, an ache in his chest that told him the truth lay deeper, darker. The Devil's Spine wasn't a place hikers talked about casually. It was a whispered stretch, barely documented, technically part of the Appalachian system, but avoided by most, not for its incline or danger, for how it felt, wrong. The moment he entered its shadows, the temperature dropped. The trees arched overhead like they'd grown sideways, bent by invisible pressure. The ground was soft with rot, and his boots left prints where the moss shouldn't give. Noah paused by a stone cairn, an unmarked pile, not on the map, not natural. 5 rocks stacked perfectly. No trail markers, no explanation. He moved past it. Within 20 minutes, the sunlight had vanished, as if night had fallen early. His compass spun. Branches snapped in the distance, but no wind blew. No animals stirred. Then the air changed. Thicker, almost humid. The trees had marks, cuts, not random, not natural, symbols, circles with slashes, upside-down crosses. One looked like an eye with nails through it, and all of them radiated the same center spiral, the symbol from the photo. The watcher's mark. His breath quickened. Every instinct screamed to turn back. But then, ahead, between 2 twisted pines, he saw it. A narrow clearing, a patch of ground untouched by moss or leaf, and in the center, another stack of stones. But this one was different, taller, freshly arranged, and beside it, a strand of fabric, sun-bleached red, snagged on a thorn. Noah stepped closer and felt it then. The silence. Not the quiet of nature, but the absence of it, like the forest was holding its breath. He picked up the fabric and turned it in his hand. A patch of writing was barely visible beneath years of wear. Talbot, a T-registry ID, 8129. Mariah's trail badge, torn from her gear. A twig snapped behind him. Noah spun around, heart hammering. Nothing there. Just the trees, watching. And suddenly, he realized he didn't remember how he got here, or how to get back. The tree was older than the trail. Its bark was gnarled and cracked like ancient skin, twisted around itself as though it had been growing in pain for centuries. It stood alone in a hollow near the ridge line, dead but upright, its limbs frozen mid-reach toward the sky. Nothing grew near it, no moss, no bird song, just silence. Eliza spotted it from a distance, drawn by the impossible stillness. As she stepped closer, she felt it. A strange tension in the air, like the hum before a storm. It was Noah who found the journal page. He crouched beside the roots, brushing away years of pine needles and brittle leaves. Half buried beneath the soil, sealed in a crumbling Ziploc bag, was a folded page, fragile, stained, the ink blurred, but still legible. Eliza took it with reverence, like handling a relic. She knew the handwriting immediately, slanted, desperate, unmistakable. Mariah. The entry was dated April 18th, 2014. The final page. I'm not alone anymore. I haven't been for days. He follows without sound, never closer than the trees. But I feel him. I hear the whispers when I try to sleep, not voices, not quite. Like language trying to be born. Today I found this tree. It's wrong. The forest is dead around it. The birds avoid it. I think this is where he comes through, like the woods are a veil and this is the tear." She had drawn a symbol beneath the writing, rough, urgent, the same spiral Eliza had seen before. But beneath the spiral, carved directly into the wood, were two words, burned deep and still sharp despite the years. "He watches." Noah looked up. She knew. Eliza's voice was low. She saw something out here no one was meant to see. A breeze stirred suddenly, rattling the brittle limbs of the tree. For a moment, just a flicker, Eliza swore she heard something in the wind. A breath, a whisper. "Leave." She stepped back instinctively, heart pounding. Noah swallowed hard. "Let's go." But Eliza's eyes stayed on the mark in the tree. Number, not yet. This forest still held the rest of the story. Flashback, April 16th, 2014. The trail had narrowed to a whisper. Sunlight slanted low, filtering through pines like cathedral glass. Mariah's calves burned. Her water was low. Jade walked beside her, chewing sunflower seeds and spitting shells every few steps. She wore mismatched socks and a grin that hid something feral. They shouldn't have been there. Not that deep. Not that off course. But Jade had insisted. "Shortcut'll shave 4 miles easy. Trust me, I hiked this stretch last year with my ex. It's a straight ridge bypass. No one uses it because it's not marked. Locals call it the Crow Cut." Mariah had hesitated. The air felt wrong, heavy, like the forest didn't want them there. But Jade's grin had won, and the sound behind them sealed it. A crack. Not just a twig. A step. They'd heard it for 2 nights now. Always behind, never seen. Too precise for an animal. Too patient for a person. They left the trail. They followed an old service road now choked in roots and rot. The signs of life vanished. No birds, no deer, not even insects. Just them. And that sound. Always behind. Jade's tone changed when the sun dipped too low. "You hear that?" she whispered. Mariah nodded. Her throat was tight. Something moved in the trees behind them. Deliberate. Heavy. But when they turned, there was nothing. Always nothing. They reached an old fire tower, collapsed in on itself like it had folded inward. Nearby, an empty tent frame. Torn. Sun-bleached. Recent. Mariah crouched low. "We have to go back." Jade's face was pale now. "He's not behind us anymore." "What?" Jade pointed. Ahead, past the trees, a silhouette stood, still, watching. It vanished between blinks. Mariah turned to Jade. "Promise me, if something happens, you tell someone. Tell them where we went. Tell them I didn't just disappear." Jade grabbed her hand. "We'll both make it back. Number, promise." Jade nodded, trembling. "I promise." Then came the scream. Not animal, human. They ran. They didn't know it yet, but that moment, that pact, would become the last time anyone would see both of them, because only one girl ever made it out of the Crow Cut, and she never spoke of what happened again. The map was hand-drawn, creased, smudged, and stitched together from 2 ranger survey copies and a hunter's field notes. Eliza studied it under the cabin's single overhead bulb, her breath fogging in the cold. The red X sat deep in a hollow near Pine Hollow Ridge, an area long closed to the public. She knew the name. Everyone who'd worked Briar Ridge 10 years ago did. Bearclaw, real name, Keith Halderman, ex-con, tracker, survivalist. A man who knew the Appalachian interior better than the maps did, and claimed to have learned it from the old blood. Arrested in 2009 for assaulting a woman near the trailhead. released in 2013 under parole, vanished 6 months later. The hut was where he went to disappear. Eliza hiked in before first light, alone, frost crunching beneath her boots. The climb was steep and narrow, almost deliberately unwelcoming. The trees here leaned inward, too close. When she crested the ridge, she saw it. A structure of logs, lashed and sun-blackened. Not a cabin, not a tent. More like a shrine made from the bones of the forest. Wind chimes made of deer, teeth clinked above the entrance. She stepped inside. The interior was half-rotted. A cot, a cast-iron stove, empty tin cans, decades old. But what caught her breath was the wall. Symbols, dozens of them, carved deep into the wood. Spirals, eyes, the Watcher's mark. Some were scratched in blood. And on the back wall, photographs. Tacked to a beam with rusted nails, warped from moisture, trail ID portraits. 8 women, young, thin, all solo hikers. Some were circled in charcoal. One was unmistakable, Mariah Talbot. Beside her, another face, Delaney Morse. Eliza's pulse thudded in her ears. She wasn't looking at trophies. She was looking at a catalog. And in the center of the room, barely visible beneath layers of soot and dirt, was a journal sealed in plastic. She knelt and opened it. The first line read, "They bring them here to feed the silence, and the woods remember every scream." Noah sat at the end of a long plastic table in the basement of the records annex, papers fanned around him like fallen leaves. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. His eyes were red-rimmed from hours of scanning names, mugshots, scanned intake reports. Nothing on Jade. No last name, no trail registry entry, no official report. It was like she had never existed. He went back to the interview logs, Eliza's original field notes from 2014. A single line scribbled hastily in the margin of the hiker testimonies caught his eye. Mariah mentioned a Jade to her roommate. Possibly met her early in trip. No record of encounter. He zoomed in on the phrase again. No record. Back then, maybe it didn't seem suspicious. Hikers crossed paths all the time. People joined up, split off. The woods made strangers feel like friends. But now, it felt deliberate. He picked up the phone and called social services in Asheville. Jade, he said. Female, late teens or early 20s, possibly a ward of the state in 2014. May have used the trail to run. The woman on the other end was quiet a moment, then sighed. That name comes up once in a while, she said. We had a girl by that nickname. Never gave a real surname. Cycled through group homes. Trouble followed her. What happened to her? A beat. She disappeared. April 2014. No one ever filed. Not officially. Noah blinked. You didn't report her? She was 18, technically aged out. Walked off after her last placement.
That system doesn't chase ghosts, Mr. Carter, not when no one's looking for them. He hung up, heart heavy. She hadn't been reported missing because no one missed her. No one, except maybe Mariah. He pulled up the photo again, Mariah's last shot on the disposable camera. 2 figures in silhouette, one with a bandana and crooked smile, the other with her arms slung tight around her. A friendship formed in fear and sealed in silence. Eliza had called Jade a ghost, but Noah was beginning to think she wasn't just a lost girl. She was the key witness, or the next victim. The tin box was rusted shut when Eliza found it, wedged beneath a collapsed beam behind the hut stove, buried under years of ash and matted fur. It took a crowbar and a pair of gloves to pry it open. Inside, darkness. And then a soft clatter. Teeth. A string of them threaded on old fishing line, yellowed and jagged like someone had tried to make a necklace out of suffering. Mixed in were plastic AD tags, burned edges, scratched laminate. She laid them out on the floor with shaking hands. 8. 7 had first names and trail dates. All were female. All solo hikers who had gone missing within a 20-mile radius of Briar Ridge over the past 15 years. Some she remembered from the old cases, others she'd never seen. And the 8th? She paused. Jade. The name wasn't on the ID, just the photo. Black and white, poor resolution, but unmistakable. The curve of her smile, the mismatched earrings, the wild, unbrushed hair. Eliza's breath caught. He kept it, she whispered. He kept her like a trophy. But something was wrong. Mariah's ID wasn't there. She sifted through the box again, heart hammering. Teeth, yes. Jade's photo, yes. Mariah? Gone. No tag, no image, nothing. Noah stood behind her, pale. So either he didn't get to her, Eliza nodded slowly, or someone else did. They stared at the tin box, the weight of it, the story it silently told. This wasn't just a hunter's cache. It was a ledger. 7 teeth, 7 IDs, each tooth strung with care, like a ritual, but the absence was louder than anything else. Mariah had disappeared, but not like the others. Her trail hadn't ended in Bearclaw's hut. It had gone somewhere else, somewhere deeper. Eliza stood, jaw tight. This wasn't the end, she said. This was the middle. Behind them, wind stirred the chimes outside, bone against bone, clicking like language trying to be born. The letter had been buried in an evidence box, misfiled, mislabeled, and forgotten. Until now. Noah found it while scanning archived mail logs from 2015, flagged only as unverified civilian tip, Appalachian noise complaint. No return address. Postmarked from Briar Ridge. A single sheet of yellowed paper folded into quarters, the ink faded but legible. The handwriting was jittery, like it had been written by someone shaking or someone who hadn't slept in days. Eliza read it aloud. They always scream first. That's the part no one tells you. You think it'll be fast, quiet, like something from the movies, but it's not. She screamed for a long time. I tried not to listen. Noah looked up sharply. It was the spring of 2014. I was camping alone near Krowskin Hollow. I heard her, a girl, screaming her throat raw, in the dark. It was so close I thought she was in my tent, but when I got out, there was no one, just trees. Eliza's fingers clenched around the page. I followed the sound. I should have gone the other way, but I followed it, and I saw him. Or it. I'm not sure now. Just a shape. Too tall. Wrong. Holding something. Or someone. I stayed hidden. I didn't help. I didn't even shout. And now I hear it every night. The screaming. I don't sleep anymore. Please, just find her, even if it's too late. A coward? There was no signature. No fingerprints had ever been recovered. The local police dismissed it as a hoax. Too vague, they said. No way to verify. But Eliza knew better now. The time, the location, the year, it was Mariah. The letter hadn't been a prank. It had been a confession, and maybe the last honest one they'd ever get. Noah's voice was hollow. Someone saw it happen and lived. Eliza folded the letter slowly, as if handling a wound. Not just lived, she said. They ran, and they've been running ever since. She stared out the station window toward the mountains. Because something's still out there, and it doesn't just take girls. A long silence passed between them. It leaves witnesses. The psych file was thick, printed on rough beige paper that smelled of mildew and quiet dismissal. Eliza flipped through it in silence at Dr. Myra Kells's office, a clinical space with beige walls, neat blinds, and no hint of the forest beyond. Mass psychogenic illness, Kells said calmly, hands folded on her lap. It happens in closed environments, boarding schools, isolated towns, war zones, and yes, backwoods trails. Eliza raised an eyebrow. You're saying 8 women, most of them hiking alone, suffered a coordinated hallucination across a span of 15 years? Not coordinated, the psychologist corrected gently. Patterned. The area you're calling Devil's Spine Sits on a known fault line. High radon output, certain molds, combined with sleep deprivation, isolation, chronic stress, the brain adapts. Invents things, especially in vulnerable minds. She handed over a laminated excerpt from a 2011 study. In cases of environmental trauma, groups under shared stress often manifest overlapping visual and auditory hallucinations, often symbolic, cultural, archetypal. Noah, seated beside Eliza, spoke up. They all reported a watcher. That doesn't sound archetypal to me. That sounds targeted. Kells gave a thin smile. Isn't the idea of being followed in the woods as old as myth? The watcher is your wolf, your wendigo, your demon in the trees. Eliza wasn't convinced. She pulled out the journal page, Mariah's spiral, the whispered language, the feeling of being stalked. "You think this is a delusion?" she asked. Kells studied the page, then looked up. "I think grief reaches for meaning. Fear finds shape. The brain doesn't like mysteries, Ms. Braith, so it writes stories." But Eliza wasn't listening anymore. Her thumb brushed over the page. The ink pressure was real. The panic in the handwriting was real. Mariah hadn't been making it up. Neither had Jade, and neither was she. Because Eliza had been in those woods now. She had felt it. And delusion didn't rattle the trees like breath. Delusion didn't leave teeth in a box. She stood, pocketing the journal page. "Maybe the brain does write stories," she said, "but sometimes stories warn us." Kells frowned. "Warn us of what?" Eliza turned at the door. "That some monsters don't live in our heads." The audio file was labeled Talbot VM Final, never opened, never reviewed, misfiled under a broken timestamp from 2014. Noah found it by accident while digging through the old evidence drives. It was only 39 seconds long, the waveform was jagged with static, a corrupted file, but the metadata was clear. April 16th, 2014, 9:41 p.m., the night she vanished. Eliza sat in silence, headphones over her ears. The room felt colder with every second that passed. A tone clicked. "Begin voicemail." There was breathing first, fast, uneven. Mariah's voice came through, distorted, too close to the mic like she was hiding the phone. Then, "Can't stay long, he's close. I think we went the wrong way." Rustling. Something crashing in the background. Then silence. A sharp gasp. Then a whisper. Desperate. "He's inside." The static swelled. For a moment it sounded like someone else. Another voice, deeper, speaking beneath hers in a guttural murmur, indistinct, like an echo from somewhere too far down to reach. Then, screaming. Not long. Just a burst. Cut off. End voicemail. Noah pressed pause. Eliza removed the headphones slowly, like they were connected to something still alive. "She was calling for help," he said quietly. "No," Eliza said. "She wasn't calling us." Noah frowned. "What do you mean?" She rewound the clip and pointed to the phrase, "He's inside." Her voice had trembled on that word, not scared like someone being followed, terrified like someone being possessed. "She wasn't talking about someone breaking into a tent," Eliza murmured. "She meant him, in her head, in her skin." Noah's hands tightened on the table. "That's not possible." But Eliza didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the audio file. Mariah's final words played again in her mind, not as a warning to others, but a confession. As if the watcher hadn't just hunted her, as if it had entered her. The lights flickered. From the corner of the room, a draft swept through the vents, carrying with it the scent of pine, and something else. Old earth, rotting leaves, breath. The trees whispered like they knew his name. Noah had wandered too far from the station. He didn't remember deciding to hike, only the sudden pressure to go, to leave behind the files, the screens, the static. The voicemail haunted him like a drug under the skin. He told himself he just needed air. But the woods were too quiet. No path, no trail, only moss and mist and a feeling in his chest like something was gently pulling at his ribcage. This way, not that. The sun was dying behind the ridge when he saw her, standing among the trees. Mariah. She was barefoot, hair matted with twigs and rain, her face streaked with something dark, mud or blood he couldn't tell. Her eyes met his across the clearing. They were wide, feral, as if she'd been running for years. "Noah," she said softly. He didn't speak, couldn't. The air in his lungs turned syrup thick. "You weren't supposed to come." The words were gentle, pained, final. I need to know what happened to you," he said. "Please, tell me." Her expression twisted, not into fear, but into something worse. Pity. "You don't find things out here," she said. "They find you." Then she turned, fast, animal-like, and melted into the fog between the trees. Noah ran after her. Branches scraped his arms, roots clawed his boots. Her shadow flickered ahead, always just out of reach. He shouted her name, once, then twice. Then nothing, no movement, no sound, just breathless cold. And then the truth. He was alone. Completely. He sank to his knees, the forest spinning around him. His heart rattled against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Get a grip," he whispered, squeezing his temples. "It wasn't her. It wasn't her." But her voice still echoed behind his eyes. "You weren't supposed to come." And for the first time, he didn't know if she meant him or it. They found it by accident, or maybe it found them. After Noah's episode in the woods, Eliza insisted they retrace his steps by daylight. She brought a drone, a GPS, and a shovel, just in case. The forest felt different up here, older. The canopy filtered the sun into a watery gray, and the air had that charged stillness, like a storm watching. Then Eliza stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. "Noah," she whispered, "look." Before them stood a perfect circle of stones, 9, weathered and cracked with age, each one carved with crude symbols, slashes, spirals, and one that looked eerily like an open eye. They weren't placed by chance. Each stone stood the same height, spaced with mathematical precision. The ground inside the circle was scorched and dry, unlike the wet moss beyond. In the center, a shallow depression, like something had once been buried and had since been dug up. Eliza knelt and ran her hand along the earth. The soil here was dense, packed. "No records of this," Noah said quietly, scanning the satellite imagery. "Not on any map, no folklore logs. It's like it was scrubbed." Eliza stared at the stones, or hidden. She turned and began to dig, at first with the shovel, then with her hands when the metal clinked against something hard. Noah crouched beside her as they cleared the dirt. It wasn't a rock. It was a jawbone, human, intact. Next to it, fabric shreds, a faded zipper, and a plastic button engraved with a faded name. Eliza brushed it clean with trembling fingers. Kay Morrow, one of the hikers who vanished in 1987, case long cold, presumed animal attack. But this was no animal burial. This was ritual. "This isn't just where people disappear," Noah whispered. "It's where they're offered." Eliza stood slowly. Her gaze swept the circle of stones. "I think this is where it starts," she said, "and maybe where it ends." Above them, wind passed through the trees in a long, low moan, as if the forest had seen them, as if it remembered. The entrance was nearly invisible, just a sliver of shadow where stone met root, masked by years of moss and silence. Eliza found it by instinct more than logic, following a trickle of cold air that shouldn't have existed. She ducked into the darkness, flashlight cutting through layers of dust and bone-dry air. The tunnel sloped down sharply, carved not by nature but by hands, deliberate, controlled. The walls bore scratch marks, shallow grooves like something had once tried to claw its way out. After 20 feet, the tunnel opened into a low chamber. It wasn't a cave. It was a room. Wooden beams braced the ceiling, rotted in places. A crude bedroll in the corner, water-stained maps spread across a barrel like a desk. Strings of twine-pinned photographs along the far wall, most of them grainy, taken with a long lens. Hikers, every one of them alone. Some of the pictures were decades old, others were recent, too recent. Then she saw it. A torn flannel shirt, faded red, the exact pattern Mariah's mother had described, folded, neatly, like it had been prepared for someone to return for it. Beside it sat a mirror, small, oval, framed in rusted brass. Eliza stepped closer, the beam of her flashlight glinting across the glass. For a breathless second, she saw herself. Then, in the reflection, movement. Behind her, she spun, nothing. But when she looked back into the mirror, she wasn't alone. Mariah stood beside her, not in flesh, in glass. Her eyes were hollow, her mouth partly open, as if caught mid-sentence. Her hair clung to her face in wet strands. She raised a trembling hand and touched the inside of the mirror as if reaching through. "Don't stay," her reflection mouthed. Eliza staggered back, heart pounding. The mirror rattled, then cracked, once, down the center. Outside, something heavy shifted in the dirt above, like the mountain had just inhaled. Eliza turned and fled, the flashlight swinging wildly. From behind, the echo of her own footsteps chased her, twinned, out of sync. Like someone else was running too. Just behind her, the sheriff's office smelled like stale coffee and fear. Sheriff Wayne McAllister leaned back in his chair, arms crossed tight over his chest, jaw locked in that familiar stone-faced way. Outside, the rain tapped the window like a metronome counting down. Eliza dropped the evidence bag on his desk. Inside, the jawbone from the stone circle, the button etched K. Morrow, and a thumb drive. "I want the case reopened," she said calmly. "Officially." McAllister didn't look at the evidence. He looked at her. "You're chasing ghosts, Braith. You bring me old bones and backwoods stories, but no body, no suspect. Hell, no crime scene." Eliza leaned in, voice low. "That's not all I have." She slid her phone across the desk. On the screen, paused at the midpoint of a shaky video. The stone circle, the jawbone, the underground room. "I have footage. I have GPS logs. I have the voicemail Mariah left the night she vanished. And I've got 2 witnesses who saw things that match accounts from other missing hikers, some dating back 40 years. McAllister looked uneasy now, not angry, worried. "I bring this to the State Bureau in 24 hours, she said, "or I leak it to the press. All of it. Your department's negligence. The evidence you ignored. The reports you buried." He rubbed his eyes with thick fingers. "You think this is some grand conspiracy?" "I think someone didn't want this story told." The sheriff stood, circled the desk. He lowered his voice. "You think you're doing these families a favor, stirring up ghosts? You think you're ready for the weight of what you'll find if you keep digging?" Eliza stepped back, fire behind her eyes. "I'm already carrying the weight. You don't get to tell me how to hold it." They stared at each other in silence. Then McAllister nodded once, slow and heavy. "You've got 24 hours, he said, "but after that, you're on your own." Eliza turned and walked out into the rain. She didn't look back. She had the truth in one hand and a deadline in the other, and the forest, always watching, just beyond the mist. The journal smelled of sweat and cedar, its leather cover cracked with age and use. Eliza found it wedged beneath a loose floorboard in the abandoned hiker's shelter, deep in the range, one the locals called Dead Cabin, though no official map labeled it that. Noah stood guard outside, gun drawn, not for people, but for the silence. It had grown too still. Inside, Eliza turned the first brittle page. Handwriting, cramped and manic, filled the margins. Dated entries, dozens, hundreds, signed only with one name, Bearclaw. She scanned the lines. They come soft, clean. The wild rubs off the edge, leaves them raw. I listen to the ones who cry in their tents. Those are the ones who still have a soul. They're not metal yet. Another entry. Found her on day 3. She smelled like dryer sheets. I watched until the stink of home wore off. Then I spoke to her through the trees. She heard me. She always did. They all do. Eliza's breath caught. She flipped faster. Drawings began to appear, figures curled in sleeping bags, symbols matching those on the stone circle. And then, Mariah? She didn't break, not at first. She looked through me, called me a lie. But even the strongest ones beg when it's time to go back to dirt. Noah appeared in the doorway. "What is it?" She turned the journal toward him. "It's not just rambling. He planned this. He He watched them, stalked them. He called it preserving wild innocence. Like he thought he was saving them. Eliza nodded, barely able to speak. Like he believed the trail wasn't killing them. He was saving them from what came after. Then she reached the final page. A single line, carved into the paper with pressure so hard it nearly tore through. I am the last echo before silence. No signature, no date. But the ink was newer, the handwriting more lucid, recently added. Eliza looked up slowly. He's still out here, she said. And somewhere, not far beyond the trees, a branch snapped. They found her by firelight. Eliza didn't remember how long they'd followed the trail, just that it had been silent, instinctive, and wrong in the way dreams are wrong. The mist opened like a curtain, and there she was, Mariah, alive, thin, wilder, wrapped in skins and shadow. Her hair longer now, streaked with white like lightning, had passed through her. She sat beside a fire in the clearing, cross-legged, calm, waiting. Noah froze. Eliza stepped forward. "You're alive," she whispered. Mariah nodded once. "Not the way you think." Her voice was raw, like it hadn't been used in years. She looked at them like memories, familiar, but faded. "We thought you were dead," Eliza said. "I was," Mariah replied, "in the ways that mattered." The fire crackled. Eliza crouched down, eye level with her. "Bearclaw, is he—" Mariah's eyes darkened. "I buried what was left of him," she said, "but not before I heard the truth. He wasn't the only one, just the last who thought he could own this place." She lifted something from the dirt, the journal, opened to the final page. "I read it," she said, "and I understood. He thought the forest belonged to him, but it doesn't belong to anyone." Noah stepped forward now. "Then why not come back? Why disappear?" Mariah looked into the flames. "Because once you hear it, the voice beneath the leaves, you can't unhear it. It whispers who you really are, and the longer you stay, the more it becomes you." She looked up, eyes shining. "I didn't run. I chose." Eliza felt the weight of those words settle into her chest. Mariah wasn't just hiding. She had become part of something else. "So what now?" Eliza asked. Mariah smiled. It was soft, sad. "You leave," she said, "or it keeps you too." Behind her, a shape shifted in the shadows, neither animal nor man. Noah reached for his weapon. Eliza stopped him, because she understood now. The trail didn't just claim the lost, it gave them a choice. And Mariah had made hers. The cassette hissed to life, that grainy static hum of something almost forgotten. Eliza sat cross-legged on the floor of her motel room, the player in front of her, the tape retrieved from the false bottom of Mariah's old backpack, found at last miles from the original trail. Noah stood in the doorway, arms folded, silent. Then her voice filled the room. "Mariah," software hesitant, a girl caught between two worlds. "If you're hearing this, then I didn't come back, and maybe I didn't want to." The voice cracked slightly, not from age, but emotion. "At first, I was terrified. Every branch breaking in the dark, every gust of wind felt like it could end me. But after a while, I realized something no one ever talks about. Freedom doesn't feel safe. It feels raw, wild, like being born all over again without anyone to tell you what name to wear." Eliza closed her eyes, the sound washing over her like rain. "I saw things out there, heard things that don't fit in stories, but they weren't monsters, not really, just echoes of what the world used to be before it was paved and packaged. People think survival is clinging to life, but sometimes it's letting go. I let go." A pause, a breath. "Tell my mom I wasn't lost. I just chose a place where silence could speak back, where fear didn't mean danger, it meant transformation." Noah looked away, jaw tight. Eliza reached forward, adjusting the volume as Mariah's final words crackled through the speaker. "If you come looking for me, be sure you're not trying to save me. I don't need saving. I found something out here. I found me." The tape clicked off with a soft mechanical sigh. Silence filled the room, and it wasn't empty. It was full, of everything unsaid between then and now, of the weight of time, of choices made in the dark, and of a voice that had finally come home, even if the girl never did. Eliza pressed her palm gently to the cassette player. She wasn't running, she whispered. She was becoming. The sun was just beginning to bleed behind the ridgeline when Noah arrived at the trailhead. The parking lot was empty except for his truck, its engine ticking as it cooled in the dusk. Everything smelled of pine and damp stone. The forest breathed slow and heavy. He stood still for a long time, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the tree line, and then movement. At first, just a shift in the shadows, a darker patch among the trees, then a shape, a figure, a woman. She stood motionless, half-wrapped in the gray hush of twilight. Her hair was longer now, tangled with moss and bark. Her clothes were layered in scavenged cloth and leather, stitched like survival, not fashion. But the eyes, those hadn't changed. Noah stepped forward. Mariah didn't. They stood 10 feet apart, the forest between them like a veil. "I thought I might see you again," he said softly. She didn't speak, didn't need to. The way she tilted her head, the way her gaze stayed steady, it said everything. Noah smiled just barely. "You look stronger." Mariah didn't nod, didn't move. She was like the trees now, rooted, quiet, ancient in her stillness. He wanted to ask 1,000 things. If she remembered that night they played guitar under the stars, if she still kept that silver compass she used to wear, if the woods had given her peace or just a deeper kind of ache. But he didn't ask. He just looked at her, and she looked back. Then slowly, Mariah stepped backward, one step then another, until the shadows gathered her again. No words, just eyes. And then she was gone. Noah stood there long after, the wind brushing past him like breath. Somewhere, an owl called out. He didn't chase her, because now he understood what Eliza had. Mariah hadn't been taken by the forest. She had chosen to live inside it. The world might call it vanishing. But out here on the edge of the known, some disappearances are just another form of becoming, and some reunions require no touch at all. Just witness. The journal was soft at the edges, the leather cover worn smooth by time and weather. Eliza sat beneath the same tree where the backpack had first been found, now tagged and cleared, but still humming with memory. She turned to the final page. The handwriting was Mariah's, unmistakably hers, slanted, urgent, but clear, like she'd waited until the exact moment she knew what needed to be said. "If someone finds this, then you've come far enough to hear me. Not with your ears, with your want. That kind of listening only comes when you're desperate to understand, not just solve." Eliza's breath caught in her throat. "I wasn't taken. I wasn't lost. I was hiding from everything you think I wanted to come back to. The trail didn't break me. It remade me." Each word felt like it had been carved with care, not inked in panic. "Out there, people live to be found. But I learned to be still, to watch, to listen to the quiet that exists before words, before noise, before rules." Bearclaw thought he could own what he didn't understand, but the forest isn't something you conquer. It's something you join. A leaf drifted down onto the page. Eliza let it stay. "I watched search parties pass within feet of me. I watched helicopters skim the canopy. I watched my face on milk cartons and news tickers. I felt sad for the version of me they were all trying to rescue. But I wasn't her anymore." Eliza felt her throat tighten. "To Mom, I'm sorry I left without goodbye. To Noah, thank you for the song. I still hum it when the wind carries too much memory. To whoever reads this, I hope you find something out here too, not someone, just something real." At the very bottom, in smaller print, "I was never lost. I was hiding." Eliza closed the journal. She didn't cry. Not this time, because it wasn't a tragedy she held in her lap. It was a choice, a final, quiet, powerful truth left in ink, a whisper that had waited 11 years to be heard. Eliza took one last look at the trailhead. The sign, faded, moss-wrapped, nailed crooked into a pine trunk, still read, "At North." But to her, it said something different now, something older, something no map could hold. Her resignation papers were filed that morning. Voluntary retirement. She didn't wait for the ceremony, no speeches, no cake in the break room. Just a quiet nod to herself and a full tank of gas pointed toward the mountains. She found Noah already there, waiting beneath the skeletal tree where the backpack had been found. He held it in both hands, tender, reverent. The leather was dried now, stiff around the edges, the canvas almost black with age and weather. But it still looked like her. It still smelled like trail dust and cedar and memory. "She'd want it here," he said. Eliza nodded. She never left. He stepped forward and gently hung the pack on the same branch where the hiker first saw it. No caution tape, no evidence bags, just the wind and a single, deliberate offering to the forest. Thunder rolled in the distance. The clouds above darkened in slow spirals, like the sky was remembering something too. Eliza tilted her face upward, eyes closed. The air felt charged, humid and heavy, alive. "You ever think she was meant to disappear?" Noah asked quietly. "I think," Eliza said, "some people don't vanish. They transform, and the world just doesn't have words for what they become." A low rumble echoed again, closer this time. The trees bowed gently in the wind. Neither of them moved. Noah placed a small river stone at the base of the tree, flat, smooth, and marked with a single carved symbol, a spiral. "I guess this is goodbye," he said. Eliza didn't respond. Her eyes were on the tree, on the backpack swaying slightly, like someone had just let go of it. Not abandoned. Released. The first drop of rain struck the dirt between them. Then another. Then hundreds. But they didn't run for cover. They let the storm take them. Because sometimes the end of the trail isn't a dead end. It's just the beginning of something too wild to follow.